You know, when we think about the experience of refuge, we tend to picture this one big, dramatic moment, right? A door swings open and there's safety on the other side. But what happens after that moment? What happens on the long walk through the door? Today, we're going to dive into what the source material calls lived refuge, to see it not just as a single event, but as a long, complicated, and deeply human process.
Let's just start with this incredible image from the author, Lay TDM 3. Think about that for a second. This isn't a frantic dash for freedom. It's a slow, careful walk. A walk filled with uncertainty. Right there, that one image just flips our whole idea of refuge on its head. It makes us look past the simple symbol of the door and focus on the people, their confusion, their fear, and the immense weight of both where they're from and where they're going.
So what is lived refuge, really?
Well, it's exactly that slow walk. It's everything that happens after the door is opened. It's the messy, ongoing, and often confusing reality of building a new life. Okay, so that brings us to the story we think we know, the one we expect to hear, the story of gratitude. But, as we're about to see, even this simple-sounding emotion is a whole lot more complex than we imagine. And you can see it right here. It's night and day. On the one hand, you have our conventional idea of gratitude. It's kind of transactional, right? A debt you have to repay or a social glue. But then you look at what gratitude can mean for a refugee, and it's a whole different universe. It becomes a way to remake yourself, a duty to those who are lost, and even a quest for justice. We see this play out all the time in the idea of the model refugee. Take a celebrated novel like Kim Thuy's Rue. It's a powerful narrative of success, of thankfulness to Canada. And it's a way for the author to piece together a new self from the ashes of the old. It's also a story that host nations love to hear, right? Because it confirms our own generosity. It makes us feel good. But then, there's this other side to gratitude, something much, much heavier. For an author and genocide survivor like Laun Ung, the debt she feels isn't to a country, it's to her family, the ones who didn't make it. And that question she asks, did they die for me? That's not just about guilt. It's the beginning of a profound quest to figure out the entire purpose of her survival. And this is where we get this incredible idea of living for. It's a kind of gratitude that turns survival into a mission. The debt isn't to a government, it's to the dead. The past isn't something you just leave behind, you carry it with you. And the people you lost live on through your actions. And interestingly, this doesn't lead to just quietly fitting in. It often leads to a deep engagement with the suffering of others and a powerful drive to fight for justice. Okay, so we've talked about gratitude, but that is not the whole story. Not even close. To get a fuller picture, we have to be willing to look at the emotion we'd probably rather not talk about, the hidden, festering wound of resentment. And I want to be really clear here. We're not just talking about being mad or upset. The source material uses this very specific term, ressentiment. Think of it like this. It's a wound where the normal reaction, anger, lashing out, is blocked. It gets turned inward, where it just simmers and festers like a poison. You see this idea come to life in characters like the gangster in Amy Fenn's fiction. This is the so-called bad refugee, the one who just refuses to play the game, to assimilate. And why? Because from where he's standing, the whole American dream looks like a sham, a game that's rigged from the very beginning. And this quote, man, this just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures that deep feeling of alienation, the sense that you're just a permanent guest, that your welcome could run out at any moment. That right there is the very fuel for resentment. But here's where it gets really fascinating, and honestly, kind of heartbreaking. This resentment isn't just for the bad refugee. It can also infect the good one, the model minority, the kid who does everything right. In Fawn's work, you have characters like Mai, who follow all the rules, work incredibly hard, and yet they still find themselves on a perpetual wait list, always held in a state of suspension by the very system they're trying so hard to join. So you've got this heavy pull of gratitude and this deep wound of resentment. Caught between them, or maybe encompassing both of them, is the work of resilience. And we need to redefine this term. It's not just about being tough or bouncing back. It's an active, creative, and transformative process. It's something you do. And we can break this work down into 3 distinct acts. First, there's recovery, which is all about finding the broken pieces of the past and giving them a new shape. Second, recounting, telling the stories of real, imperfect people to make their lives visible and beautiful. And finally, carrying on, which is about taking up the job of storyteller for the next generation. So let's take that first one, recovery. There's this amazing example from the poet Suvankam Famavongsa. She finds a scrapbook her father kept in a refugee camp. But instead of trying to explain his life, she does something so much more powerful. She takes the little things inside, doodles, maps, lists, and she builds poems out of them. She gives his fragmented past a new body, a new life. And check out this incredible example from her work. In one poem, an entire month is represented by just a single slash mark on a calendar. That's it. It doesn't tell us what happened, but it proves that something happened, that a life was being lived. It's this tiny, verifiable mark that just says, I was here, I existed. That is a profound act of recovery. Now, the second act, recounting. In his novel On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, Ocean Vuong is writing a story to his mother who can't even read it. But he isn't trying to make his family into saints. The whole point is to capture their flawed, messy, totally human selves. And in doing that, he makes their complicated lives visible and, in his words, briefly gorgeous. But, and this is a huge but, this is a dangerous act. This quote from Vuong gets right to the heart of it. To make these vulnerable lives beautiful, you first have to make them seen. But to be seen is also to be exposed, to be made a target. So resilience isn't safe. It's a brave, risky choice to create something beautiful out of pain. And that brings us to the final act, carrying on. In her memoir, Cao Cao Ye Yang very deliberately takes on the role of storyteller from her grandmother. It's this beautiful idea of inheriting a responsibility, of picking up the torch. She's making sure that the stories of her family and of the Hmong people don't just fade away when the people who lived them are gone. Okay, so we've looked at gratitude, resentment, and resilience. What happens when we put all these pieces together? Well, we get a picture that's so much richer, so much more honest, and, yeah, so much more human. In the end, Lift Refuge isn't just one thing. It's a complex mosaic. It's made up of the solemn weight of gratitude to the dead, the hidden, painful wound of resentment, and the active, creative work of resilience. And here's the most important part. These aren't stages you go through. They can all be happening at the very same time, inside the very same person. That's what makes it so real. And all this leaves us with a pretty big question to think about for ourselves. The next time you pick up a book or watch a movie about the refugee experience, ask yourself, what story am I hoping to hear? Am I looking for that simple, feel-good story of gratitude? And in looking for that, what other vital, complicated, and deeply human parts of the story might I be missing?